Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, show number 556. I am your host, Lauren Gray. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, right off the bat, I need to clarify a question that was from one of our viewers that has seen our background here and asked what this picture was there. That is the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. When we visited it, it was as awe-inspiring as everyone says it is. It goes many years back, and we were compelled to get a representation of that, and we had it framed and so forth as a reminder of just how amazing it was. So, and then other adventures and trips and places to things and so forth. But anyways, so thank you for asking, and hopefully that has quelled the question in that sense, although I did answer it back in the email, so it worked out well. But it is a reminder of just the beauty that is all around us. Thank you again so much for joining us. It is the latter part, end of March, and we are in the throes of much going on right now that's impacting our industry and everyone personally and professionally and in all stratas and globally and everything else. Not to delve into that, that's not a political show, but we do talk about the things that impact our industry as hospitality, and it is impacting it. The gas prices globally are being severely affected there in certain APAC nations. I have some people talking about the fact that with gas being, and it is being rationed immediately for controllability in certain countries, especially in the Asian Pacific region. Because of that, it obviously has a dramatic influence on travel and tourism, not just in-country travel for those that live and reside, but also those that are visiting many countries. And those countries rely so heavily upon tourism dollars. And the price fluctuation plus the diminishment of current demand in some circumstances is profound. That we see that in most places here in the US, same circumstances, although I have to say when you math out the current gas prices in Europe as a contrast, it's around $11 a gallon. So as we are very upset about the cost of gas here in the United States, it is still, in contrast, quite a bargain in some senses. Not that it is. Then you feel with all of what's going on in the domestic U.S. with the TSA and the increasing frustration with travel and the tragedies in travel right now, airline travel, terrible, terrible thing that happened in LaGuardia. People are looking, it's like drive gas prices, fly prices have escalated dramatically and so forth. Is this a time to pause travel plans? Now, there has been a lot of discussions, as we talked last week, where January, February, and current March numbers are great. So everyone's thinking, well, this isn't having that kind of an impact. This was something to keep in context. This is all that happened prior to these things and events now happening occurred. So people, in spite of the fact of the war in Iran and so forth, having created the escalations of things, they still were going to go on their spring break. So those things were still happening, and gas prices going up. They're not going to go on their trip for an extra $100 cost in gas or $200 cost, whatever it might have been. So now we're going to see, and do see in some senses, pace and pickup for the summer to be look at and watch what really is going to happen. How is it really going to affect things? Which goes, ironically, as everything does, to our topic of today's show, and that is the strategy associated with operating your ad campaigns. Every day we still have rooms to sell our perishable product. Every day, restaurant-wise, we have seats to fill and food that has to be sold. Again, perishable product. Services and spas, golf, everything else like this. Our days continue on. If we don't sell it, it's not sellable the next day. It's only the new inventory next day. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk a lot about more of a granular, specific, interactive issue with ad campaign strategy, and that is campaign logic. How do you approach your campaigns? What do you do in relationship to your campaigns? How do you measure and marker what you actively do? It's one thing to talk about running campaigns. It's another thing to how do you actually run and operate them. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper, not super granular, but deeper than just the superficial have Google ad campaigns or Bing ad campaigns and branded, non-branded, but more particulars as to running and the performance of those. So campaign logic, how underperforming ads are good. And it may sound odd to say that, but in all honesty, you look at what you do with ads, and most of the conversation when people discuss how they run ad campaigns, they'll toss around a lot of buzzwords. One of the ones we've talked about in the sense of approaching your ad campaigns is you throw out a wide net first, a lot of variety to what you're doing, a lot of variations to your filters, your targeting filters, and ad types. And then from that, in a very quick performance level, you begin to cull, put back on the shelf, those that aren't reaching KPIs that you feel are equitable to maintain. And that equitability of maintenance is usually associated with the budget that you have available to put on this campaign. If you have a narrow budget, you're going to be extremely low tolerance of underperforming or no performing ads. You're going to do that very quickly, where they might just need a foothold to begin to, you're creating a long arc of engagement from those ads that you weren't able to give it enough time because you don't have enough money to give it time. Also, too, and we'll get to the type of ad, which is the core of our conversation today. The creatives to it lend itself that if you're asking for immediate engagement, you're very close to the zero moment of transaction, and you're really looking to push that conversion over, and all of your ads are focused on that centric conversion value opportunity, and you're so ROI driven and ROAS driven that it really has to be about buy now, here it is, click it. Then you will cull quickly any ads that aren't producing at that measured response, your KPI. And that's content based associated with it. So what usually happens, it's called what is it? Power performance. What was it? What was that? The power law system. Sorry, mind blank. Power law system. And basically what that is say that the very few of your ads will drive most of your business. We talk about the 80-20 rules and so forth and so on, but you'll find that down to 6% of your ads that you initially start with, depending upon the diversity and the amount that you started with, the most of your production, the largest portion of your production, is attributable to the top 6% of the ads that you are running. And then there's a fall from behind that in the cascade as to how productive those ads can be. Now, with that in mind, it's very clear and easy to say most ads don't work. If you're thinking that the 6% drives the beast and that's what drives the most value for what you're spending on, then that means 94% of them aren't. And that doesn't mean it's an all or nothing. Only 6% are on the green and then all the rest is red. It's a progression. There are those that are at threshold. There are those that are just marginally below threshold and progressively less. And those proportions are scaled to whatever the metric of KPI that you have that says that that is above or below that line. Those ads aren't just to be cast away. Now, again, this is budget contingent. If you don't have the latitude of budget or the durability of the budget to continue to pay for the value of those ads, you have to cull. Obviously, you're going to take the slowest in the herd, the least and the worst, and cull those out, so that they don't bleed from money that can be better spent upwards to those that are producing better than them. Now, in the world of making these, we often talk about A/B testing, multivariate testing. And this is all related to targeting. Targeting is to say, okay, I have this product I'm selling. It's a special promotion for event-driven, let's say. And I have a geo filter on it, a demographic filter on it, and a behavioral filter on it. And all of them have one filter each of those. And I have an ad set. I have a click to call. I have a click to act. I have a image ad, and I have a video. Let's say we have one of each for each of those types of filters. As a matter of fact, just for simplicity, because we see this more often than not, all the ads are the same because there's not enough variance between the three types of filters that you're running. So you run these ads on those filters. Now, on the filter that you have, the demographic one, you might change it to a different demographic or include another demographic that has to show the budget value for. So it dilutes the impact of what could be converting on a narrow casted demographic. You broaden the demographic. On another ad set, you might have gone over and created a variation on behavior, added another filter and or changed a filter. And so you have these variations. They're still running the campaigns because they're asimilar to the message that you want to all of the filtering have, but you're changing and defining the targets. This is casting that wide net we talked about, where you're saying instead of just these 3 cities for geofilter, I'm going to include 3 more. So you've diluted the exposure value of that ad by doubling the area that it has to cover, but you're including ones that weren't included in the first, which when you're looking at it, you see both campaigns running. If you see that the campaign that has the reduced geofilter is performing better than the one that has the diluted filter, you get to look at the diluted filter, or the one that has more geo targets, and see, is the business that it is getting representative of that, or is it getting it from the other places that this doesn't have? Maybe it's best to cull the 3 that this one has now and let it run just the 3 that aren't in this one. You might find that it's better to just nail it down to 1 or take the filter off. You're constantly making changes and variations from the targeting that's going on. This is a very familiar conversation that we have talked about many times about how you mitigate and manage your actual campaigns, changing the filters. Some of it also variable as to what you're spending. You see limitations to what you've allocated as a budget for them. Maybe you either increase your willingness to pay per click. You see how much you're losing because you're not paying enough per click. You see that your voice is not getting as far as you would like, but what you are getting to is producing very well your conversion value. So you may choose to increase your budget. So that allows you to get more of a voice associated with the usage of what the targeting you're making, whether it's keywords. Okay, again, all this is the variables, keywords, demographics, behavioral. Yes, sorry, my wandered on that one. So these are how you manipulate your different various campaigns. Now, talking about negative ad campaigns or poor performing campaigns, I should say, underperforming, not negative. Negative is its own connotation. This is don't do these words, don't use these phrases, so forth, so on. Underperforming. You have this space to manipulate that growth in that margin below the 6% to see if you can bump up the value that they represent by making these changes in targeting and budget. But a lot of it has to go observationally. You look at it and say, okay, this ad campaign for the audience it's getting to is converting well. It's converting almost very, very similar to the top 6%, let's say, but its volume isn't sufficient because we're not giving it enough budget. If we were to increase the budget by X much, then we would get this much more audience. And that conversion applied to that additional audience will get us this much more revenue, which would push it up into the category of success. I'll put it above the KPI line. This is a control, again, of targeting and budget. You might change the willingness that you spend per click. The budget stays the same, but you're not getting exposed to enough people because you're not willing to spend the money to get in front of them. You see the audience is there. The audience volume was good, which is why you picked it. The targeting seems to be showing that you're getting to that audience, but your budget, even though it's there, is not getting spent efficiently because you have such a low threshold for cost per click that if you were to increase it, you'll get the exposure to the audience that will, again, from that audience growth compared to the conversion you're getting, push it into the higher performing category of your ads. Again, all targeting, again, all budgeting. I want to focus on a third component that often gets overlooked. We mentioned it briefly in our description of the process of what we're talking about today, and that is your content. Now, you know in the shows, we've talked about the progression of engagement with a guest. We often set these campaigns up as single representation, persistent exposure. The same ad repetitively shown. Once it's been connected or the filtering is working, this ad keeps getting shown, which creates fatigue, saturation issues, and resentment a lot of times from the users. And we talked about progressive engagement. Once they've seen one engagement from you, that audience is defined, and then that audience is used to show next engagement, the next iteration of an ad. And then from there, so on and so on, that progressive flow of dialogue with a guest to bring them to a point of conversion. That is related to content. Now, content has as much of a power over the success of underperforming or performing ads as our targeting does, as our budgeting does. Because content has a sense of urgency or clarity or progressive understanding. So urgency is this deal is tomorrow or now, get it now. We only have now to get it and what have you. And that gets overabused incessantly. We create this false sense of urgency to enact an action. Even if it's legitimately, we only have today to offer it, it's still very much the most common way that people create their content. Here's rates and dates. Here's now. Here's the thing. We're the best. Do the good. Do this. Click now. And ads are meant to create a function. We want you to do something. And a lot of times, as we've talked about the strategy, a good ad, it brings you to a place that can expand what it's trying to convince you of in a larger way that ads can't. And that add value of action to information drives them to the path of conversion. Ads in themselves, though, can be timed well to be an introduction to next content, to next content, to next content. And that content can be ads. So when you make an ad and it's about here now, here now, here now, the criteria of its success literally is based upon the time frame that you have the ad to run, the monies that it needs to do to create the revenue. Does it fall up into that 6% category of success for all the ads that you do run? And if it's underperforming it, then you create the variables of what we talked about, the targeting, the budget, okay, keywords and what have you, and make variations to those kind of processes. But the content can also change the process. If you have an opportunity to engage at a level that is successful, where you're engaging with people that are already defined by their current interest in either you or your market, then you can create an engagement progression that the content isn't necessarily about sense of urgency, as it is about awareness and willingness to know more, to validate the value proposition that you're implying or talking directly about. This requires a different perspective of underperforming ads. Certain lead ads, even though they'll be given attribution later on, are untethered as to their success until that actually happens. So an early ad, introducing and acknowledging your interest in something without defining a hard sell, must do this, click now, but here's more information, or here's something you should be more aware of, or this is a value add that we could have, come click here so you see why we want you to click with us, because we have this additional value to things that you're interested in. That progression then goes to a next series of ads. Each progressive series of ads has its own threshold of performance requirements. So as the first ad, who has a little bit longer of a run opportunity because it's only exposing what it is you want to say at a value opportunity, always having the call to action available, but that's not the driving force of the ad. The next ad set, you can also have your variations on it, because that audience that tethered to the first one, okay, that second audience has a different driver. You can create different targeting associated with them. You can allow for smaller budgets, higher click cost, because you don't need to talk about exposure of audience. You need to talk about volume of audience, excuse me. You don't need to talk about the volume of the audience that your budget allows. You're talking about the value of the audience, which your click value, your cost per click allows. And your willingness to pay more for each engagement allows you to be better exposed to that audience. Your targeting, already defined by the audience, then can be varied according to specific interests. Now you have a different filtering. It isn't about where you got them from. That's already been attained in the first level. Now it's about what is it they're interested in. It could be the event, or it could be the destination, or it could be your amenities, or it could be unrelated. It could be just the type of travel that they're doing. These all create other variations of targeting that in and of themselves, in the general performance scale of your ad campaigns, may be well below the threshold of that 6% success. Instead, though, their unique value in the attribution of what they're contributing to, when aggregated with the pathway of the targeting, becomes very valuable. And that's where, if you were to see it at scale, it's a very small slice fragment of your overall campaign, well below the top 6% that's getting the lion's share of production. But its value contribution to what it's engaged with, and the filtering of the audiences and the targeting that you're creating and the target variations you're creating and the content type that you're putting into it, makes it very valuable for a conclusive conversion. It's not just about how fast you can sell the first message. It's about how well the messages sell based on how you're using them. And that's a key element to why you look at underperforming ads as being good. You have traction with engagement. It's just insufficient traction compared to the overall performance of the campaigns that you've launched. Culling out anything that goes below a certain performance threshold of KPI and ROAS is great for short term. That's a very much needed logic. I have this short window. I have a limited budget, which also is another reason for these things to be short windowed and high KPIs. I only have a limited amount of money to be able to do this for. Take that same scenario where you're short windowed, short opportunity. I got to fill this weekend. I got to hit it hard. If it doesn't have a good engagement, I got to drop it because it's just not targeting the people that need to make an action to it, even though they might later come back. I don't have the monies for that. Is a different conversation than saying, okay, so Christmas this year, and here we are in March. What should I be doing about that? Well, there should be things about December travel plans. You should always have a progressive campaigns related to various aspects of your destination's value moments, your seasons, obviously your off seasons, and what have you. So if you have a longer runway to have an engagement for them, you have less sense of urgency and more of a long play. Now, some people keep those campaigns paused, and there is logic to that as well. One is you only have so much budget, and you're on a performance budget scale at some point, so that kind of money's being spent that far out from it being successfully converted is hard to justify in a month when you're squeezing nickels to make sure that you have enough money for the ones that need to produce in the month, for the month, or in the next month of. But I would say that then you would rely heavier on your SEO optimization and your value of what your content is, so that people can, who are interested in thinking that far ahead, discover what values you want them to know about you. But you need to pepper that if you get the engagements, even if it's a small fractional amount of people that are engaging with your Christmas festivities 2026 page, let it create a small audience for you and use it in ads that say, these are some fun things. Would you like to sign up for our updates as to what's going on for 2026 in our market before everybody else knows, blah, blah, blah. You're literally feeding what they engaged with you on. This allows you to create an audience that when it comes time to be more important for you, that you can actually get a head start knowing you can begin to approach those people sooner, already being cultivated in their interest category and the targeting that you know about them already from where they're from and what they were looking at and what they're interested in. So you can create specific messaging that can get early and good high yield conversions. So now all of a sudden that trickle money that you may have spent 6 months prior to the month that it's now producing was well worth the spend. You have to give yourself breathing space to look at the value of what you're actually doing overall, not just myopically in front of you for the day of. Again, there's prioritizations for anything that you're doing, whether it's short-term increases or long-term strategies. You need to make sure that you understand that the underperforming ads have an incredibly high value to working and cultivating the relationships and modifying them to either produce at the scale that you want the whole campaign to be operating at, that toxic 6%, or that cultivate a value relationship that help you define future growth because you've already created the engagement audiences, understanding the targeting that developed them, understood the budgets that were either limiting them or capable of growing, okay? And you have one step ahead of actually not being behind when you need that information to be used and amped up. And that's another thing, is that you also learn when things don't just work. There are ads that just don't resonate. There are targeting that just doesn't work. It's too uniquely combined. It was a great idea when you built it, but it doesn't. There's no audience that you thought was there that's actually engaging with what you're doing. And even though you have the budget for it to be represented, maybe you increase the cost per click to make sure that you get access to the audience that you think is there, and the content is tailored to what you're trying to get in front of them, you just still don't see it. No ad campaign is a bad ad campaign, air quotes. It just may be at the wrong time. Take it, take your notes, write what you thought, why you built it, write your thoughts on why you think it didn't work, write your thoughts on what you did to make it work. Not just it launched, it didn't work, we shut it off. No, we launched it, we modified because we thought this might make the change, maybe we change the demographics, maybe we change the budget, maybe we change the CPC, maybe we change the content. All of these things, it just didn't work. Great, put it on the shelf. Even if you never use that ad campaign again, the lessons you learn from it not doing something are as important as the gold you strike when an ad campaign resonates. You see something and saying, yeah, And maybe you go back to it afterwards and you realize the flawed logic. You've learned by little nits and pieces of other things why this one way back when that you thought was going to be so good didn't. You look back going, it makes sense. Nobody from that area is interested in that, or that age group is totally not into this, or you know what, the audience is there, but not for the reasons that we thought they were searching for. They were looking at other things that are related to what we thought they were searching for. That's why it never produced. You learn always. And that's like a wonderful self knowledge place. Going back to old underperforming ads and looking again and saying, so why didn't this work? And if you still can't answer it, and sometimes life's mysteries are you will never be able to. But most of the time, if you look at it with new set of eyes, 6 months, a year from that later after you did it, you get a sense of going, yeah, okay, that makes sense. You have a better understanding, which only improves your future campaigning on understanding what the combinations are better suited for. So underperforming ads have a massive amount of value, not just in improving their performance under the marginality of what you consider to be true success, but also modifying and capably improving how you approach what you do in targeting, budgeting, and content development. So I think we've done, make sure I'm looking through all my notes, make sure we covered all the things that we want. Okay. Oh, actually, there was a statement I wanted to make out of something that I thought was very applicable to this. To be clear, as we see by the 6% out of 100%, winning ads are rare. Okay. They're not the majority. But you do begin to see predictable patterns emerge when you test at scale. The more you do these things and the more that you get your super performing struck gold ones, the ones that are above the KPI threshold and so forth, to get the lion's share of the budget because they're producing at the level and the budget can support, the audience can support the budget that's being presented and everything else. All of your underperforming ones from that scale and below also have a pattern that shows. You begin to see that perhaps a particular targeting type, it's a persistent underperforming target. As much as you believe that city is a feeder market from all of your folio information and so forth, the channel you're picking on might not be the channel that they use. It might be your email campaigns produce that feeder market value, but ads don't, or paid ads don't, or paid social doesn't. Whatever the channel might be, you might think that it proves that it's valuable, but it doesn't prove it on that channel. Because remember, as we talked about just all of this in the context of what we're doing for ads, we multiply it to every other channel we represent and work with. Bing, even though it's not Google, it's still the same paid performance channel. It may not resonate with the audience as best as you know that that audience is coming from there, from your folio information or what have you. It may just simply be because you have a great email engagement with the audience that is there. And that's how they identify with you. And they wait for your email and they don't engage your ads. So keep in mind that as much as you think you're so solid on knowing that this is the way it is, you only have to create one more variable and it puts into question everything you just decided. So, yeah. Okay, running discipline, experimentation, measuring attention metrics, rapidly scaling small percentage ads. Yeah, I think I'm, again, making notes to make sure I hit all the highlights to this. So there you have it. Underperforming ads, they're good in the way that they could be used. And it's a part of the campaign logic that you should be doing. And I hope that it helps having talked through this and maybe in your own mindset as to how you think about you're running with ads. Because a lot of times as a hospitality marketer, sometimes it's only you talking to your thought, little self-I says stuff as to the logic of what you're doing. And, you always try to do the right thing, but that doesn't mean it's always right. So having outside sources to talk through this is incredibly valuable, which actually goes to our hospitalitymarketing.club. We have a peer level group. It's not on Facebook or anything like this. It's its own platform. That is hospitality marketers that get together, that dialogue over these things and talk through mental scenarios and so forth and issues and complexities and questions, and they help others and so forth. And if you go to hospitalitymarketing.club, put your email in, I send a quiz to validate that you do, in fact, our current hospitality marketer. This is journeyman level conversation. This isn't somebody that is fresh and exposed to marketing and wants to learn it from zero. This is people that are engaged and active and have engaged, active, questions that they handle and operate. And then if approved, then we send you the credentials to join, and you can join the groups that you want to converse with. It's really fun and very enjoyable. Of course, everyone that watches this live on the TV channel, Hospitality Channel, on all smart TVs, I keep rattling them off as Google, Apple, Amazon, Roku, and so forth and so on. But every smart TV, you can look for Hospitality Channel. It's there. As an app, same thing exists for iOS or Google Play. Look for the Hospitality Channel. It's an app there, the live show, and our product showcases to give vendors a chance to just expose what they're doing. It's not sponsorship from us or anything. It's just exposure to a lot of times, we go to conferences like High Tech and so forth to be exposed to a lot of content of vendors. We're just giving you another forum because I have a frustration that when you go to vendors' forums, they're so ambiguous and buzzwordy and they're not real clear because they don't want their competitors to know exactly how they do it or what they do. So you go to their website, it doesn't really tell you, the potential customer, what it is you want to have them do because it seems like, oh, you solved the world and this, but how? What do you do? So the showcase is a fun chance for people to put their B-roll up and show off what the product is. And they said, no money's from that or anything like that. Just a chance to have another place to go find those kind of things if you're geeking out for that. And there's a pay gateway if you want additional content. Not pushing that for say. And then we have our hospitality radio. That broadcasts digitally, globally in 39 countries. Our live TV channel actually it goes to 209 countries and translated into 11 languages. And of course, we're simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, variety of channels and pages on all of that. Also on Twitch, for if you get your media from Twitch. It's also there. So I think we've covered all the bases of where to find us. Of course, if you want any feedback to me, insights, questions, follow-ups, what have you, reach me at lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I answer each and every email that I receive for the TV channel or the podcast that we do. And as always, my name is Lauren Gray, and I thank you for the privilege of your time. Have a wonderful day.